October 17, 1989. Many people gathered to watch the third game of the World Series.
And he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earth.
Imagine what it was like on that day. Maybe you were actually there. How did or would you feel during this type of event? The unexpected events of the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake prompted another unexpected event, the spontaneous influx of volunteer support. As a part of the Emergency Volunteer Center e-learning series, this introductory video will help you understand why an Emergency Volunteer Center, or EVC, is a critical tool for coordinating volunteers and who plays a key role in its operation.
In 1989, we had the Loma Prieta earthquake, and we had a lot of spontaneous volunteers show up at fire stations and police stations. Good people wanting to help, but really they got in the way more than anything else at the time.
To coordinate this volume of support, impromptu call centers were set up to quickly identify where volunteers would be most useful. The concept of a walk-in volunteer reception center was developed in Santa Cruz County following the Loma Prieta earthquake. It was later adopted as a model for spontaneous volunteer coordination throughout the Bay Area. The 2001 September 11th terrorist attacks led to focused planning efforts for the coordination of spontaneous volunteers around the country. This prompted the Santa Clara County Emergency Managers Association, in collaboration with other county and community-based organizations, to develop the award-winning EVC model that is in use today.
Prior to September 11th, maybe a handful of 16 cities had plans in place. And by putting this plan in place, we ensure that all jurisdictions have coordinated, standardized planning for spontaneous volunteer management.
These developments were the origin of Santa Clara County's Emergency Volunteer Center, where planning, organizing, and implementation come together to create a local resource most capable of coordinating volunteers during a disaster.
Volunteers are going to show up to be able to help with resources and with experiences, and we as organizations and as cities need to be able to provide a place for them to show up to.
Since then, these emergency volunteer centers have been implemented in various counties throughout the state. The Santa Clara County EMA convenes an EVC subcommittee to provide oversight and guidance to the project.
The state of California, I would have to say, is one of the leading states in our ability to share resources, mobilize resources, and move them up and down the state of California to deal with fires, floods, earthquakes, you name it.
Why is this important?
Post-disaster, there's any number of things that need to be done. Without organization, you're going to miss an opportunity to put a specific skill set into play where it's necessary. And you're going to miss those opportunities to really leverage the skills and expertise that volunteers bring to the table to put them where they're needed most.
During the September 11th terrorist attacks of 2001, the influx of volunteer support was so overwhelming that volunteer centers actually shut down. When a devastating tornado hit Moore, Oklahoma in 2013, volunteers rushed to the scene and worked throughout the night to help first responders. Why do you think people volunteer during times of disaster?
There are so many reasons that volunteers come forward, and I think one of them is compassion.
Once people know that their families are okay or they're okay, they want to go help everybody else.
People always look to the opportunity to help one another.
And we see such damage and such destruction on such a scale that we feel compelled to do something. We feel like we need to be a part of the solution to get us back to normal.
People are going to help. They're going to want to show up to an event that has a big magnitude.
When Loma Prieta happened, my own family went to a volunteer center and packed groceries and things that were flown over to Watsonville. It was a way for them to keep their mind off of the disaster themselves.
We in San Jose are a city of 1 million people, and effectively that means a city of 1 million hearts. And those hearts really look for the opportunity to help each other, especially when we see each other in need.
When spontaneous volunteers typically show up, the American Red Cross integrates them into local operations. Yet, for the first time in response to Hurricane Katrina, they called out nationwide for an additional 40,000 spontaneous volunteers. During Florida's record-breaking 2004 hurricane season, 100,000 spontaneous volunteers converged to help. Coordinated efforts in response to the 2011 San Bruno fire provide another good example where 1,000 volunteers registered online with minimal use of walk-in or call centers. There are also volunteers that are already affiliated with and specifically trained by recognized organizations.
An affiliated volunteer would be somebody like myself. I'm associated with CERT. I've been background checked. I am credentialed to be the CERT team leader.
These affiliated volunteers are very skilled and knowledgeable. They have a keen eye for safety and a clear understanding of their role in disaster response. Yet, the vast majority of volunteers are spontaneous volunteers.
Spontaneous volunteer is somebody that shows up at the scene of an emergency or a disaster wanting to help, but usually doesn't have specific training and may not have credentials that are recognized locally.
Consider this. Your neighborhood is impacted by a major event. You are safe, but feel compelled to help your community recover. How do you know where to go or how to help?
The first thing that needs to happen sometimes is putting out the fires, saving lives, and those are often handled by professionals.
And so when people self-report, it kind of taxes the first responder at the incident because they don't know what this person's capable of doing. Are they creating a safety concern versus what they're trying to do, which is assist?
Without organization, volunteers get in the way and they end up not helping.
So an emergency volunteer center gives us the ability to co-locate those volunteers, find out what their capabilities are, and properly direct them in an area where they can actually provide some real value to the incident, something that on the emergency scene might not even be necessary.
They're going to collect all the information from nonprofits in the area and from, frankly, the county and city governments to determine where we need the help, and then they'll assist in deploying people.
Each emergency response effort arises from a unique set of circumstances. However, there is one thing that is certain. Spontaneous volunteers will show up, regardless of whether there are coordinating efforts in place or not.
So an emergency volunteer center is activated when the event gets to a point where we can no longer manage the amount of volunteers that are coming forward to try to assist.
Consider this. You are a firefighter responding in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, one of the deadliest hurricanes in U.S. history. You must mobilize around the clock for search and rescue efforts. How do you manage the hundreds of well-meaning volunteers that approach you to ask how they can help?
First thing we're going to do when the event happens is we're going to start collecting information as quickly as possible about what happened. As we do that, we're in the community. We're going to be meeting with the public. They're going to have questions. One of those things they're going to want to ask is, what can I do? First responders need to know what information to give them. Where is the center? What can they do? How to check in? All of those key pieces of information, giving them something meaningful to do and a way to contribute, and certainly it helps us to get them out of harm's way.
In a disaster, the EVC provides centralized organization and support. Trained staff interview volunteers to match skills and availability with opportunities in the community at government agencies or nonprofit organizations. Consider this. A disaster happens and transportation is hindered. What might be a way to coordinate volunteers without having a physical gathering location?
The types of emergency volunteer centers include a physical location that you've set up, telephone, and online. But you want to be able to respond differently because there may not be power or the internet may not be working. So you should make sure that you can respond however the event has affected the population.
Media coverage can help to inform the public of some volunteer opportunities. However, information changes quickly and unreported opportunities may go unmet without an EVC.
The media plays actually a really big part in an EVC. In the event of a disaster, we're going to want to notify folks, whether it's someone with very little skill that can do sandbagging to someone as elaborate as a doctor or a public safety official. We want to get those people notified, and we want to let them know where to go. And our best source to do that is our media.
The media can inform the public of how to contact the EVC, while government agencies and nonprofit organizations can inform the EVC of their specific volunteer requests. The EVC provides volunteers with the most up-to-date information. They know when and where to report, what's expected of them, and what to bring. The result is that their efforts create value where it's needed the most. So, how is all of this accomplished? There are several key players involved in the successful operation of an EVC. Government is often the first point of contact for residents wanting to help in an emergency.
Local government is involved, but out in the field where it's happening is a lot of the community-based organizations and our allied agency partners.
Locally, each of these groups play an integral part in EVC operation.
We've got really important partners, whether it be the county, in our case the county of Santa Clara, Cadre, a nonprofit that is organized around helping volunteers, helping disaster relief efforts.
Well, there are all kinds of different organizations within the Cadre network that might use volunteers. It could be the American Red Cross and their sheltering responsibilities. It could be feeding types of programs, whether that's the Salvation Army or the food bank and organizing food distributions. It could be senior centers operated by a local government entity, or it could be any of our host of programs that serve people with disabilities.
Well, CERT is the Community Emergency Response Team, and that is a FEMA-sponsored organization that organizes volunteers around the community to help first responders after disaster when local resources aren't able to cope with what's happening.
The role the American Red Cross would play in an emergency volunteer center would initially be one of giving advice and delineating what our needs are.
These government agencies and nonprofit organizations work in coordination with the EVC when requesting volunteers. For all of these agencies, it is important to consider how emergency volunteer centers fit into their plan in advance of a disaster.
It's very important to include emergency volunteer centers into the emergency planning for response for a number of reasons. This is a chance to organize people ahead of an event and make sure that you offer pre-registration so that people understand where to go, where to report, and how they can best help in a response effort.
Here's what you should know. Volunteers will come to help. EVCs provide necessary structure for organizing volunteers. An EVC benefits the entire community, responders, organizations, and the volunteers themselves. And integrate an emergency volunteer center into your plan.
I hope that the training will give the ability to feel more comfortable standing up an emergency volunteer center and actually matching spontaneous volunteers with the unmet needs of the disaster.
Access additional resources and learn more about EVC operations and management at www.evc-santaclaracounty.org.